Ja, einen wunderschönen guten Tag. Ich begrüße Sie ganz herzlich und freue mich, dass Sie so zahlreich erschienen sind. And of course, Lorenzo Mattotti, I would
Good
like
morning.
to welcome you very
Thank you.
much.
It works? Yes, okay. Thank you.
Und es ist ja kein Geheimnis mehr und Sie wissen das alle, dass Lorenzo Mattotti in diesem Jahr den Max-Moritz-Preis erhält für sein Lebenswerk. Ich habe so ein paar Reaktionen eingefangen in den letzten Tagen und Stunden von Leuten, die mich so darauf angesprochen haben, auf das Gespräch heute. Und ich habe so den Eindruck, dass Sie alle oder das Publikum des Comic-Salons der Meinung ist, dass dieser Preis wirklich zu Recht vergeben wird, weil Lorenzo Mattotti hat uns ein großartiges Werk bis jetzt vorgelegt, das viele von uns sehr stark beeindruckt hat. Und ich sage jetzt einfach mal ein paar Worte über ihn auf Deutsch. Wir werden das Gespräch nachher im Anschluss nicht auf Italienisch führen, sondern auf Englisch. Ich hoffe, das ist für niemanden ein Problem. Und ich habe auch so von vielen Leuten, mit denen ich in den letzten Tagen gesprochen habe, bin ich gefragt worden, fragst du ihn eigentlich das? Und das Thema interessiert mich besonders. Und ich bin da so zu dem Punkt gekommen, dass es wahrscheinlich ganz sinnvoll ist, dass Sie alle die Gelegenheit haben, im Anschluss an unser Gespräch auch Ihre eigenen Fragen zu stellen, wenn Sie welche haben. Und Lorenzo Mattotti wird sie dann natürlich gerne beantworten. Und was ich zur Einführung sagen kann, ist, dass er bereits nicht das erste Mal in Erlangen ist dieses Jahr. Es hat 2006 eine große Ausstellung hier gegeben. Es gibt jetzt eine kleinere Ausstellung im Palais Stutterheim über das neue Buch Max und Moritz, nicht Max und Moritz, das ist der Preis, Hänsel und Gretel, das kommt auch unten drin vor. Und es ist auch nicht der erste Max-Moritz-Preis, den er heute verliehen bekommt, später am Abend während der Gala, sondern vor 20 Jahren, 30 Jahren, 20 Jahren bereits. 1992 ist sein Album Feuer ausgezeichnet worden und er hat, das war damals nicht in Erlangen, sondern auf dem Hamburger Comic-Salon, der Anfang der 90er Jahre stattfand, 1993 für seine Graphic Novel Der Mann am Fenster einen Preis bekommen. Lorenzo Mattotti lebt und arbeitet heute überwiegend in Paris. Er wurde geboren 1954 in der Lombardei in Norditalien, hat ein Architekturstudium in Venedig angefangen, aber nicht abgeschlossen, weil er nämlich in dieser Zeit parallel angefangen hat, Comics zu zeichnen. Und die erschienen ab Mitte der 70er Jahre in Frankreich und in Italien. Und Anfang der 80er Jahre war er Gründungsmitglied und entscheidender Motor der italienischen Künstlergruppe Valvoline, benannt nach dem Motoröl, was Ihnen vielleicht namentlich ein Begriff ist. Und darüber werden wir auch noch nachher so ein bisschen sprechen, wie die Parallelen aussehen oder was mit diesem Namen gemeint ist und wie die Parallelen eventuell aussehen zwischen diesem Motoröl und den Farben seiner Comics. Es sind in dieser Zeit, Anfang der 80er Jahre, seine ersten farbigen Alben auch erschienen. Spartaco war das erste, 1983. Und dann, das ist im Grunde genommen eigentlich ein kleiner Sensationserfolg gewesen, 3 Jahre später, 1986, das Album Feuer. Seitdem hat er eine große Zahl ganz unterschiedlicher Arbeiten gemacht, weiterhin farbgewaltige, großformatige Alben, aber auch umfangreiche schwarz-weiße Erzählungen. Er hat für die Werbung gearbeitet, Plakate gestaltet, Kinderbücher illustriert, an Animationsfilmen mitgearbeitet. Er ist also ein äußerst vielseitiger Autor, der seine eigenen Geschichten geschrieben hat, der zusammen mit anderen Autoren gearbeitet hat und aber auch literarische Stoffe adaptiert oder, darüber werden wir dann vielleicht auch noch sprechen, ist besser zu sagen, interpretiert hat. Vor allem Feuer ist natürlich ein legendäres Album, ein Meilenstein, so könnte man so vergleichen mit so Alben wie Arzach von Möbius beispielsweise, wo es eine Zeit davor und eine Zeit danach gab, also wirklich Schlüsselwerke, durch die sich die Comiclandschaft international sehr stark verändert hat. So, jetzt wollen wir mal zum Gespräch übergehen. Lorenzo, I have introduced you in some short sentences, and because we discussed it before we came in here, that in some countries, and among them is Germany, your books were published much later than in France or in Italy. So Germany is a country in which comics started quite late. And you have been here in 2006 already with a wonderful exhibition. And that was 6 years ago. What has happened in your life since then?
I have a very little memory, so I don't really, maybe I don't remember so much. After the exhibition, what's the year it was?
2006, 6 years ago.
Yeah, 6 years ago. Well, I don't know. I always work in different work, and sometimes I finish one, another I continue another one. Well, I think I start in this period, or maybe before, a new story in black and white. That very strange story that I don't still finished. It's a very long story, and I do it in one time, in another time I stopped and continue. Now I did 130 pages, but it's a long story. It's a really long story. I think I would like to finish next year. About comics, I start this year a collaboration with Corriere della Sera, Italian magazine that published 2 big pages each week, but not every week. Mm-hmm. So I started new characters and experimenting a new sort of style. I mixed many styles inside. So there is a pen, crayon, color, black and white, line in color. The story is the history is very traditional, but the style I try to change all the time. The main character is a cleaner of windows, and it looks the reality with his eyes between transparent surface and matte surface. You know, is a sort of philosopher. And he's always blue, like glass. So this is in the side of the comics. So really, I didn't finish a new book. After, I think I did different books. This book in Venice I did 4 years ago. They invite me to, the town of Venice invite me to make a book about Venice. And I was very free to do that. So I studied in Venice, and so I knew Venice when I was students. And I didn't want to make a classic Venice touristic book, but really I try to make a book how I look at Venice. For me, how it was interesting for me, Venice, what I love of Venice. And it's a sort of walking inside the space of Venice, the wall, the road, the canal. I try to understand what is the characteristic of Venice I like. So it's a sort of, there are no tourists, there are no persons. It's a really empty Venice. Is the Venice that more people live in Venice knows, more than tourists. And it was really important because I was really free to make a book, to don't be obliged to make a spectacular book, illustrating book. It was a very honest book. Really, it's my love for Venice. Then I don't know if I did Darkness of Fear, the Fear of Darkness, the animation film. Mm-hmm. I don't remember if I did 6 years ago. I collaborated for, in the Fear of Darkness is a film of different story. And the producer asked to different artists to make his whole story. Charles Barnes makes a little story, and you can see in the exhibition of Charles Barnes. I did an episode of 12 minutes, and for me it was a great experience to be the director of my own stories, and I learned so much about to make an animation film. It was really interesting, very long to do, but really, really interesting and fascinating me so much. After I collaborate, the director of an animation director, Enzo Dalò, asked me to collaborate with him to a Pinocchio version in animation film. Mm-hmm. And we start 12 years ago to make a pilot, 6 minutes. And when he found the money, he asked me, "Oh, Lorenzo, can you please collaborate with me to make all the study for the film, the study of characters and the study for the backgrounds and I say the artist dimension of this film." So for 2 years I work to prepare the film, and now I know they finish in these days the film. I don't know the result because I didn't was the artistic director. I prepare to work inside, but I don't know how it will be the result. Then when I do that, always I make my book, my drawing. Always I try to have a sort of freedom, to have my freedom with my drawing, my works. And two big important books I did in this period also, it was the collaboration with Lou Reed, the singer of Velvet Underground, and that asked me to make illustration of the text that he wrote for the theatrical show he did with Bob Wilson. That is about, the name is Poetry. It's about the world of Edgar Allan Poe. So he makes the text about Edgar Allan Poe and the music. And he decided to make a book with illustration. He saw my Jekyll and Hyde books. He likes so much. So he found me and he asked me to collaborate with him. So we make this book that is a really collaboration between us, because he gave me all sort of freedom. I was not obliged to make the classic illustration of the text. He told me, follow the music, follow the words, and do what you feel inside. So I was really free to go really inside my more darkness and strange style drawing. And I started to work, and always he likes to see, and he told me what he likes and much more. But it was really a collaboration. It was very attentive what I was doing. And in the end, I think it's a really strong, strange, very strange object, very strange book. And I'm happy because I put inside different techniques. I did crayon, black and white, plume, pinceau. How do you say pinceau?
Pencil.
Pencil, and in very different styles. And in the same moment, I did Hansel and Gretel. That at the beginning, Hansel and Gretel was done for an exhibition in New York for the Metropolitan Theater. The New Yorker asked to some artists to make their own version of Hansel and Gretel in a very free way. And when Françoise Mouly asked me to do that, really I didn't want it to make the illustration like Pinocchio. I was working in this period in a series of big images about dark forests, about very landscape only with the brush, very black, about the light inside the forest. And I spoke with François. I say, oh, I don't want to make the illustration. What do you think if I make big images with the characters inside? Say, it's a very good idea. Go on with it. So I was in this mood, and I started to make these images. I did 6, 7 images, big images. You can see them in the Erlangen, yes.
Lutherheim.
Yeah, and I make the exhibition. After 1 year, when the original came to me, I told to myself, it's a pity. Maybe it's a good idea to make a book. So I spoke with Gallimard, the editor of Gallimard. He saw the big images, and he liked so much. So we decided to make a book. And I did other 6 images, and we make the book. We decided the maquette, the project, the graphic project. And for me, it was really, really a big pleasure to make, can make this book in this way, because I didn't start from the text. I start from my drawing, and it's a very big pleasure. So in this period, always I did some very strange works, but all the time I'm drawing in my books, sketchbooks. I think in this last year I work so much with the black and white, for the brush, with the brush, with the plume. Black and white, I go really inside the possibility I wanted to discover, really to go straight on in this kind of problem. And now it's 1 year, after the experience of Hansel and Gretel, I continued this idea of big images with a brush, and I started to make big images with improvisation. Mm-hmm. But a sort of exploration of my imaginary about mythology and fairy tales, you know. It's like Hansel and Gretel now, they lost themselves, and I follow other strange creatures inside the forest, a sort of new characters come out, and now I did about 30 big images. I would like to make a book, but I don't know really. I don't want to put a text. I think they are very strange, mysterious, and maybe a text is not so strong how the images. So many projects. Always the project come out doing drawing. Always drawing. I'm following a big collection of my illustration, and I don't know. I think it's enough.
It's very impressive because I mean we are talking about only 6 years, and it's amazing that you are doing so many things and so many different things. And I was just showing some of the illustrations of your book, Hänsel and Gretel, and Gretel, not Max and Moritz. And when I saw the book for the first time, I thought, well, this is a kind of a dream for an artist because you have a big size and you can do something. And I had the feeling that you have worked maybe the same size. But then I saw the originals in the exhibition, and I couldn't believe it. They are like this. It's amazing. Why did you do them so big?
Well, I explained that it was not a choice to make a book. It was a choice to make a beautiful original for an exhibition. And I was working really with the big size of the forest. I did a more bigger, some painting of one. I like to, when I do painting, I like the size of 1.5 meters, 1.5 meters. Is a sort of physical pleasure I have doing that. And maybe I work so much with a little dimension, and when I do big dimension, is really a big pleasure. Big pleasure to make with a brush. I can put more energy inside. It's interesting for me to understand the composition in the big. I understand. I think I know the problem of the composition in the little size, but when I make the big size, I'm always a sort of fear. If I'm able to control that, The way I start to make the forest is between improvisation and between control. So I start to really doing the improvisation. I learn to control the composition. And now this work and all the other work I'm doing gave me comfort. I'm more comfortable in this kind of work with improvisation and control of the composition. I don't pass my time I put this one, the empty. Really, there is the energy. I think the energy that we have when a drawing come out by the improvisation is a very strong energy, and the drawing has a sort of is much more strong. I try to find this energy in my drawing. Not always is possible. With the color, I try for a long time, but the color in painting it needs more control. What I like in the black and white is this this emotion that you can put on the paper, and you must be work. You know, there is a sort of, I like this kind of energy, controlled energy, because in fact all the culture of the composition, all what I learned before, I think is inside me and go out in a strong way.
You were talking about black and white. When I look at the single illustrations, I mean, there is very little white. It's almost, the whole page is almost covered by black and structures with a black. There is one special page where I got a funny idea. It is this one. I show it because the landscape in which the story is playing is a Middle European landscape. But I know it a little bit because my son is living in Phnom Penh, so I know a little bit about illustrations about Cambodia. And when I saw this landscape, I really found a little bit, I really had a little bit the feeling it's a Cambodian landscape. And it looks a little bit like a temple of Angkor Wat. And you have also done some illustrations about Angkor Wat, I think, right?
Yes, I make a book about Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and it was very strong experience, and I also learn in this moment to make the painting with the pencil and to look the temple. And I don't know, this is about the improvisation. Really, I started to make I did the forest, and I started to make the roof, and come out this kind of building. And in fact, when I did that, sometime I said, oh, strange, it's some oriental, and but for me it was not this the point. I didn't decide really. I really was interested in the strongness of the light and the volume, and to make this strange house. I really didn't want to. I didn't like to make the Swiss house. I always hate this kind of this part of the fable. So I make this strange construction in the forest. Maybe the structure I used, it was done by Oriental Cambodian images, but this is the strongness of our imaginary. We can, in a fairy tales, we can mix different stratification of our culture. We can put inside and developed and to make a new images. This is really what for me is interesting. What's our culture, our imaginary with his stratification also are able to mix, and what I'm able to mix together and to regenerate a new images, to give to the public this kind of reinterpretation. I think is the most important.
Yeah. You have, it was not your first time that you are illustrating, or that you have illustrated a classic tale. You have done it several times. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Pinocchio, you were talking about the Lou Reed project with Edgar Allan Poe. How do you find the stories you are interested in?
Oh, normally is an editor that asks me, why don't you do that?
Oh, okay.
So I say no for 9%, 80%, but sometimes there is some project that take me, why not? To make a book is always a new adventure and very strange. I remember I did the Klanger, the Bruit de Givre. When I did the story for the Frankfurter Allgemeine, it was really thanks to you that asked me to make the story and why don't you make the story in the Frankfurter Allgemeine? So I say, oh, why not? And so I started to work with Jorge Zentner, and we started to do that. Jekyll Hyde, I did it was because a new magazine arrived and asked us, we would like to make some classic in comics. And well, after many thinking, I decided that Jekyll Hyde, but the magazine stopped. So we started with 10 pages. And then with Casterman, after 5 years, we decide, we start to make Jekyll Hyde. Well, continue. I did Freud, the psychoanalysis of Freud last year because the editor, they were publishing the new version of translation and asked me if I was interested. If I must decide the text, I'm so unsure and so problematic that after 2 years to think about that, I don't decide. So it's always good to have someone that commands you. Fellini one time told that he makes a film because he signed a contract. I remember Casanova. So if Fellini do that, in my little space I can do. But really, I'm very unsure and very slow in my decision. That sometimes it's very good that people push me to do that. So all the time is a new story, you know.
When we were talking about black and white so far, what made you very, very famous in the mid-80s, that was, of course, your color albums. And I said it before when I was saying some sentences in German. For me, Fires is an album like we have very few albums. Let's say, for instance, Arzach by Möbius or Maus by Art Spiegelman. It's milestones where is a time before and a time after. Because, I mean, it was when you made it, the mid-70s, early 80s, were a time when a lot of people were experimenting with colors because before the color was just a coloring of the black and white artwork. And at that time, a lot of people were using the colors and designing the drawing from the colors and not from the black and white. Were you at that time, was there a kind of mood where you saw what was happening around you so that you decided to work with the color, or what was the inspiration to base everything of this album on the colors, on the expression of the colors?
Well, it's a long story because it was really a period very, very strong for the language of the comics. The laser and the scan gave the possibility to print the color, direct color, and the material. It was not so expensive before. And so a new world of expression grew up. And like Arzach, like Alberto Breccia, the big teachers of us. Alberto Breccia influenced me so much. But it was really a very strong period for all the experimentation. We were discovering a new world. It was like exploration of a new lens that we didn't know that it was possible. And every new author did something interesting and strange. I was lucky to live all this period in a very strong way, because I was lucky to meet personally Alberto Breccia, to look at the original, to meet Hugo Pratt, to meet Munoz, to meet all the big masters, and I could see the original, and with my friend always speaking about the possibility of the comics like a new language, a rich language. We thought the comics like the cinema, like literature, like theater, like music. Music and comics for us was our language. We wanted to put inside all our culture. And it's strange to say this now, but really it was a sort of revolution in the 70s. And Fire, I think, is the end of my idea of what the comics, for what I can do in the comics. And I remember it was a very, very clever period. I was very, very lucid, very precise in what I wanted. I would like to do, but I didn't know how to arrive. I know that there were a perspective, but I didn't really the roads. The road was Fire. In fact, Fire, it was for me a trip, picture by picture, word by word, color by color, to make this construction. Every day it was a new experience, and every images, every sign I put inside, it was really thought that it was what I wanted. It was not experimental. It was really the end of a trip. It was maybe more or less 10 years I was doing comics. Maybe the beginning not so good, experimenting, doing black and white, doing some color. But the possibility to make this material, also the crayon, the pencil, and I didn't know really so much about the pastel. I discovered, I did some images in pastel, but not in the comics. So I discovered little by little this strongness. And is a sort of miracle of balance between emotion and rational control. I think it was really a very strong period. Maybe I was on the border, on the edge of my work. You know, I was not able to live with my work. I didn't have money. I didn't know if I was really good to make comics. I didn't have no success. It was very difficult to publish. And this possibility to make this story, it was really, or I do something good, or I stopped. I think it was also this big energy that I have inside, that I decided really to go really inside I was able to do, you know, really straight on inside. And I don't know, the color is emotional, is control, is composition. I was living with the color. The color, it was really my thinking. And it's like a sort of like the black and white in Hansel and Gretel. Is a sort that I discover the possibility to the expression is pure, is true. After there is the problem, the problem is to repeat yourself, to think you know so much, or maybe you know too much, and you don't discover. The energy that you have when you discover the images, and your eyes are discovery. They are émerveillé. How do you say émerveillé? Meraville. You are looking for the first time what is coming up, and this is incredible energy, incredible pleasure. And I think this pleasure to discover, you can give to the readers. I think there is a sort of strange things that, and I remember when you discover all your body is alive. And this energy, I think, is inside the images, is inside, and but it's very difficult. Is a moment of balance of your know-how and your emotion, you know, expression.
And I think at that time it was not only discovering new ways of telling stories, of making the art for yourself. I really have the feeling it was you were in a kind of revolutionary mood because you were also the founder and the motor of Valvoline. The group you founded in Italy together with Igor and other people. Yeah. So you really had the feeling it's a time to change comics.
Well, yes, when you are young, you want to change the world, not only the comics. You want that your work, maybe you can change the world, everybody in peace, you know. Is completely, when you are young, you want change everything. But I think the group, it was very good for us because gave us energy. Always speaking about the language, always speaking what's happening. Oh, did you see that? Oh, it's good. Oh, no, it's not so good. Maybe it's better. Always interesting to speak about it because you think what we can do, what is possible, what your idea of the language, what your idea of the comics. And in Italy, not only in Italy, in Europe, Raw in the United States, in Holland, Joe Zwart, Mariscal, in Spain, Giuseppe, and the other one in French, all the people, I don't remember the name, but all the young artists, there were a sort of revolution for the language, for the comics, really for the comics. And I think I didn't want to make a revolution, but to make something that I didn't see before. So, but sometimes I remember when I did this, I was saying, I did nothing. I only continue the experience of my masters. What start Alberto Breccia, what start Ugo Pratt, what start Munoz, what start my masters, I only do that. Only to push just a little more this kind. The abstraction that Alberto Breccia makes in some story, not yet arrived, is a sort of freedom to the expression of the comics that is so strong. Now, if you see that, if you show to the young artists, the young people making comics, they, what? It's possible to do that? Because it's so strong, his language. So I think I organize in the mood of a story. I play much more with the images, the tension with one image between another one, with the color and another one, the tension of the dramatic moods. And the words also, they are not a narrative. The words, they are like a song inside. If you see a silent movie, only images, and sometimes you put some music. I work with the words in this kind of moods, to put the music in the images, you know, to go with this this atmosphere and this melody. But I was influenced by the film of Tarkovsky, the first film of Herzog. When I saw the film of Tarkovsky, I say, oh my God, what's the images of the wind, the images of the water, the heart, and the poetry. He put the poetry inside, and the music, and the voice behind, and I say, oh, maybe we can do in the comics that. Or Herzog, Aguirre, or Gaspar Hauser, you know, the nature. Maybe in this moment I say, oh, maybe I'm able to put the nature inside the comics, the wind, the smell, the humid. I try, but I was so concentrated. So maybe I arrive.
With the nature, I must see if I find it here, because I found a sequence in the book The Man at the Window. The main character is a sculptor, and he is very restless and traveling around, being here, being there, but not concentrating on anything. And so at one sequence he says, I travel around because I don't know where I can find myself. And the grandfather he sees in his dream says, oh, that's because you don't feel the nature anymore. Is this a kind of message? Because I can find it in many of your books and also in Fires. I mean, you have the Panzer ship at the end, which is exploding, and the island is safe. Is this a kind of basic feeling that you have the idea there is a conflict between civilization and nature, and civilization might be the winner, which is not too good?
Oh, I don't want to go inside some too big discussion. I'm very little person. I'm not so clever at how to resolve the problem of the heart. I think all this problem is about maybe my problem. My problem in relationship with my true emotion, and the influence that the town, the people, the social living have with me. I think I didn't remember this discussion in The Man of the Window, but I can find myself still now. I think I'm always lost. How did you say I'm doing so different things? Maybe I'm most lost in my work. In the sign, not in the world. But in fact, when I'm alone in the nature, I feel a sort of harmony and relation and a dimension what I am, and I'm in the center of the world, you know, in the center of the world, and anymore, you know. I'm just a little cellula of the
Zelle?
Yes, I like to lost myself in the nature. I think is one of the best emotion I have, and this gives me a sort of peace with my interior. But I'm not able to stay in. Maybe in the nature I'm a very mystic or religious or ascetic. I think make a contradiction with my really nature, and the drawing. To make drawing, to draw, to work in the drawing, is a sort of to stay in a sort of meditation, continuum meditation. What I'm able to do, who I am, what I'm doing, what I'm drawing is who I am. And you always look to don't lost myself, you know. Always for a long time, I near my work, like book, always I do my little drawing. Very simple, very strange, is very free. And this kind of working is a sort of find my nature, you know, to don't be afraid to put out all the time, to don't destroy with the relation with my inside. And this helped me really for a long time, for these 30 years, to don't lost myself. And maybe is this the relation with the nature?
Okay. To make sure that we are not sitting, still sitting here at 10 o'clock in the evening, I would like to ask you one last question before we will see if there are some questions from our public also. We were talking again, and you know this from many situations, I'm sure, very much about your book, Fires. It's a child you have born a quarter of a century ago. And I think the importance of this book and how mind-blowing it was for everybody of us can very clearly be seen by the fact that we are talking about it again and again and again. Is there sometimes a moment where you are a little bit annoyed about it and say to yourself, oh, now we are talking again about Fires, why don't people ask me about my new project and what I'm doing now and my other books, because there are many other books?
No, to be true, I'm not boring. I think for me it's also a mystery, Fire. So when I speak about that, is speak about all my work. It's not a Fire. I think in Fire is all my work that I'm doing now is a sort of a faro, lighthouse, also for me. And to speak about that is always for me to think what I did and what I can do and what I don't want to do, that I did and I don't want to repeat maybe. But for me, it's a big pleasure to have done Fire. I'm very lucky to have done this one. And maybe it's always people is looking for a new Fire by me. But I resolved this problem. I did so many other books, so many other things, so many strange things. I think Fire, it was the window, the door, where I could go out to discover a new way to do my work. So I like my children. I like all my work. I'm very proud of Fire, and I don't speak so much about Fire. And the comics is not a big word, and it's good for me to speak to people what it was for me to do. No, I'm not boring, but it's a mystery. Really, I think it was really a very strong moment and also a mystery inside.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we see if there's something our public would like to know.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Also, wer jetzt noch Fragen hat, lade ich sehr herzlich ein, die zu stellen, wenn sie da sind. So, we answered everything already. So you see, everybody only wants to know about Fires. So I have a very last question. Is there any project you have in mind as a kind of dream where you feel this is something, I mean, maybe not only from the subject, but also to try out a new technique or whatever. Is there anything you have in mind you really would like to do in the future?
All the time. All the time I say to myself, oh, I had to change techniques. I want to try a new way to make story or make images. I always try new things, but not always the result is so good. But I think to find a new road, you must do this road. So it's not the first time you do something that you arrive to have something strong. Ansel and Gretel arrive after, if I show all the drawing are done before this forest, you can understand that I arrived to do that. So there is always a road. I had to make my little lines with plume, and I did The Man at the Window. I pass 15 years to do every days one little drawing. I make many watercolor in this kind, with the Encore, with this. I use paper, Nepalese paper, to use the ink, and I found something really interesting. Now, this story I'm doing for the magazine, I think the future is the mixing. The language of the comics is evolving in a very quick way with the computer, with this kind. And but always I see in some author that they are ready to use the different languages in the same story, you know, to mix in a not all. Mazzucchelli did a very strong, interesting books. He used a different code in the same story. This is really interesting. Maybe for me too cold, very rational, but it's really interesting. Art Spiegelman, when he did his big pages, he mixed comics language, mouse language, use the tradition of the comics, American comics, and mixed things. I use my techniques I know, not in a very rational way, but some characters has a sort of technique. I don't want to go inside. I'm very afraid to make comic style. I could do that, but comic style give always a sort of distance. You make tragedy, you accept. Always is comics. With all my work, I try to break this distance. And sometimes people don't understand. It's too serious, too dramatic, too painting, too much things. But I'm interested in this way to find a new code, a serious code, to speak in the comics. The comics language always, with this distance, is very strong, always go on. But it's very difficult to give emotion in this way. You give the emotion with the story. If the story is emotional, people are emoting. You don't give emotion with the drawing, with the color, with the drawing, with the images, because it's always there is a sort of coldness, ironic coldness, distance, pop language, distance. And this is always the problem of the comics. To break this code and to be more direct. Is a very difficult discuss. Now with the graphic novel, the direction is narration, dialogue, text, and the drawing is following images. Sometimes we can make very beautiful graphic novel without drawing. But there are some very good artists that are able, with the drawing, give us also the emotion. I like when the code, the language is rich. When I understand, this is really, he knows the language of the comics. He knows the language of the drawing, of the images, of the rhythm. He knows the language of the color. He knows really to make comics. What the language of the comics can give us of the new. But it's very rare in this moment. because the production is in another direction. But I think there are always big masters. Every generation gives us master and new talent. And my relation with the new comics is, maybe I did what I have to do. And maybe my new direction is exploring the strongness of the images, the land between the narration and the painting, you know? I don't make illustration, I don't make painting. What I'm doing images with something inside, a mystery inside. I'm interested in this kind of thing, book that you look inside. Every page is a, wow, what is this? A new languages, maybe without words, only with the sign that give us emotion. Maybe. I'm doing, but exploring. And my relation with the comics is a sort of hate and love.
But I think to show what you can do, especially with emotions, with drawings, I think the best examples for this in many different ways is your books. And I'm sure you will surprise us some more times with some things in the future. Lorenzo, I thank you very, very much for this interesting discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you for the interesting. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.